Good evening and welcome. Tonight we will be going over the history and geography of Amhara in Ethiopia. Amhara is a really incredible region in terms of history and geography, but I will make the disclaimer that I'm filming this the day I'm posting it because a lot has happened in Amhara in the last few weeks, and it's one of those where breaking news could happen at any moment. So I didn't want to film a video a week ago and then have events happen, and this video would already be out of date. So just keep in mind that in a week from this video things could change, hopefully for the better. But this is the history of Amhara as of late September 2023. So October 2023 might change things. We'll have to keep an eye on this place and see. But let's talk about the geography, because Ethiopia is a very, very diverse country, not just in terms of people groups, but in landscapes. You have the East African Rift ripping apart the African continent right here, creating all kinds of different features, but in Amhara, it's mainly the mountain range over here, where we can find the highest point, Ras Dashim, up here, up in the Simien Mountains National Park area, which is actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So why don't we start there? Amhara has 3 sites, but 2 of them are historical. Let's start with the geographic one. Let me pull it up real quick. I have Google Earth on here. We have Simien National Park. Massive erosion over the years on the Ethiopian plateau has created one of the most spectacular landscapes in the world, with jagged mountain peaks, deep valleys, and sharp precipices dropping some 1,500 meters. The park is home to some extremely rare animals such as the Galata baboon, the simian fox, and the Walia ibex, a goat found nowhere else in the world. Let's take a look at some of the pictures here and see these incredible mountains. We'll take a look at them on Google Earth too after history. But you can see that it's not like a typical, deciduous tree-covered park. It has a lot of varieties of plants and a lot of really neat animals. There's the simian wolf, they call it, which is just the fox. Some cute birds. There's the ibex, really incredible horns. There's the baboons, which just run rampant. The mature males have this red spot on their chest. So, don't worry, that's not an injury. But, they're everywhere. And they migrate in little packs. I want to say herds, but I don't think primates travel in herds, right? But they're all over the place. Some neat old architecture, too, which we're definitely going to take a look at. Some really cool old architecture elsewhere in Amhara. Really incredible horns on these ibex. It's a very, very beautiful place. Speaking of beautiful places, the kind of other half of the Amhara region over here is not as mountainous. It's a little more hilly, but it is the farthest reaches of what will eventually become the Congo rainforest. It's very green and lush up here, and this is where we will find, even though it's on the crease of my book here, Lake Tana. Now, if you've heard that name before, it has a very, very famous river flowing out of it, none other than the Blue Nile, which eventually flows into the White Nile up in Sudan, creating the Nile River. Lake Tana is a very deep, deep lake, in which the water in here fluctuates a lot. It rises and falls quite a bit, which increases the flow of the Blue Nile. And what's interesting is that fluctuation in Lake Tana is what created the Nile floods up in Egypt, which led to Egyptian mythology, which led to the Egyptian dynasties and cultures up there that we all know and love from ancient history. How cool is that? It all started in this little lake, getting lots of rainfall. Little lake. It's a huge lake. You can see Bahir Dar is the capital of Amhara on the shores of Lake Tana, right where the Blue Nile begins. And probably the most famous site in Amhara is not the mountains, not the lake. It is this town right here of Lalibela. And we're going to start our history here because I'm sure there's lots of interesting history before the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th centuries. I'm going to start in the 12th century in history, which is kind of late in history, right? Like, surely there's been people here. It's Ethiopia. You know, some of the oldest hominid fossils was found over here on a farm. So, clearly there's human habitation here since way before that, but I didn't find anything interesting about it, other than they were here, you know. But it's really after the fall of the Aksumite Empire, which you can see Aksum up here in Tigray. The first Christian empire in Ethiopia, in Africa, and probably the world. You know, there were other kingdoms, but this was a full-blown empire, which brought Christianity. The kings were claimed to be descendants of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. And it was after the Aksumite kingdom collapsed that other kingdoms sprang up. In Amhara, that would have been the Zagwe dynasty. And it was a Zagwe king whose name was Lalibela, who had been to Jerusalem before and apparently was a big fan. I mean, Jerusalem is a beautiful, beautiful spot on this planet, and I'm sure back in the 1100s it was even more interesting. But it was around that time that Jerusalem was conquered by the Arab invaders. It became part of the Muslim caliphates. King Lalibela was apparently really distraught by this, so he thought he would build a new Jerusalem for people to have pilgrimages to. So he ordered the churches of Lalibela to be built. And in my opinion, these are some of the most stunning, incredible churches in the world. So let me grab UNESCO once again so we can look at Lalibela. Let's see. Lalibela. Here we go. The 11 medieval monolithic cave churches of this 13th century New Jerusalem are situated in a mountainous region in the heart of Ethiopia, near a traditional village with circular-shaped dwellings. Lalibela is a high place of Ethiopian Christianity, still today a place of pilgrimage and devotion. It's probably the most holy place in the Ethiopian Tewahedo Church, because they have a huge, huge pilgrimage here every year on Epiphany. So as you can see here, let me make it bigger. This is a rock. This is one rock that was carved down to create this incredible cross-shaped church. It's stunning, right? It's unreal. And they are very, very intricate, very delicate. You can see that preservations of them happens constantly. Most of them are under these huge coverings to keep the rain out. Because one wrong flood, one wrong move, and these things are destroyed. But there's carvings in all the walls, on the windows, all the passageways inside. The main courtyard where people stand for services, and the areas where the preachers preach inside the churches are all carved within one huge rock, and there's like 12 of these. Absolutely stunning. It's literally just a big hole dug into this rock, and they built a building right there, all made out of one piece of rock. It's so incredible. Just the interiors, the beautiful artwork of the Ethiopian style artwork. Their churches we'll take a look at a bit more later. Look at the cross even in the windows. How cool is that? All the tiny details. It's oops, I tapped on it. So detailed. It's incredible. It is one of the big prides of this area. For good reason, because it's stunning. But we'll take a look at it a little more on Google Earth later. There's some better pictures on Google Earth of Lalibela. Carefully set this over here. Okay, there we go. So that's pretty much when Amhara's Christian culture began to blossom. As people made pilgrimages to Lalibela, it sprung up other churches and some really incredible monasteries in the area as well. And once the Zagwe kingdom declined, a new kingdom sprang up in this area, which is either known as the Ethiopian kingdom, where we get the name Ethiopia, or the Abyssinian kingdom, which it was known in other parts of the world, mainly like Europe and the Middle East. But they called themselves the Ethiopians. That kingdom was established in 1270, and again, descendants from Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. But a little different from other empires is that they were nomadic. They did not have a capital city. They just wandered around the region, living in luxurious tents, like tents, but luxurious tents, and surveying the kingdom as they went, traveling wherever the weather and the food was best, which is pretty cool. I think not a lot of kingdoms can say that they have that in their history, that the emperors constantly traveled around. But the one issue that led to was some instability. The Adal Sultanate was just over here. Can you see? Okay, you can see. Obviously a sultanate, they were Muslim, and they launched quite a few invasions and jihads against the Ethiopian kingdoms. And eventually the Ottomans would come in and try to conquer as well, once the Ottomans became a thing. So something needed to be done. So the king at this time, we're in, oh gosh, I didn't write down the years, like the 1600s, decided that the capital, the permanent settlement, would be Gondor up here. Gondor. Which sounds like a place in Lord of the Rings, but it's not. It's different. Gondor up here. This was King Fasilides, and he built a stunning, stunning castle. And his the other kings in this kingdom also built castles on the same site. The capital would eventually move around Amhara. But Gondor was the first permanent capital of the Ethiopian kingdom. And surprise, that castle is a UNESCO site. So let me pull up UNESCO one more time for Amhara's third site. Fasil Gebi, the Gondar region. In the 16th and 17th centuries, the fortress city of Fasil Gebi was the residence of the Ethiopian Emperor Fasilides and his successors. Surrounded by a 900-meter-long wall, the city contains palaces, churches, monasteries, and unique public and private buildings marked by Hindu and Arab influences, subsequently transformed by the Baroque style brought to Gondar by the Jesuit missionaries. I was reading that Facilities actually paid Portuguese people to design this castle based on their architecture, which it's not exactly Portuguese, but you can see the elements of it. It's a huge complex and really stunning. There's something very medieval about it, even though we are long out of the medieval era. Look at this angel here. But it's a big, beautiful complex, and again, these pictures on UNESCO don't really do it justice. We'll look at it on Google Earth too. But those are the 3 UNESCO sites of Amhara: the Simien Mountains National Park, Lalibela, and Fossil Gebi in Gondar. Put that down carefully again. Out of the way. There we go. The only other major historical events in Amhara before we get to modern day was the Italian invasion of Ethiopia in the 1930s, just at the beginnings of World War II. They really built up Bahir Dar and some other towns, kind of modernized them a little bit before the Ethiopians managed to reclaim their land. And the Ethiopian kingdom would eventually fall in 1974 when the Derg took over. Very militaristic group that controlled Ethiopia with an iron fist until 1991. But by then the capital had moved down to Addis Ababa, outside of Amhara anyway. So let's talk about the current crisis in Amhara, which really kind of sort of began around 2019. It's kind of hard to determine the beginnings of Ethiopian ethnic conflicts because they've sort of always been there, but one of the issues that really facilitates these violent clashes is that each region of Ethiopia has their own militias to protect the interest of the regions. And the regions of Ethiopia are mainly divided by ethnic group, which is pretty hard considering there's hundreds. I think there's about 400 different ethnicities in Ethiopia. So you can see the main ones. We've got Tigray, Amhara, the Oro, and Oromia, among many others, the Somali. The southern nations, nationalities, and peoples, you can't see, it's just down here. It's this part here. It's a lot bigger. Recently was divided up in some referendums, so this map is now outdated. There's 3 more regions of Ethiopia created, separated by different ethnicities. But clearly the Amharic people live in or majority of Amharic people live in Amhara, but you can find Amharic people all over Ethiopia. The Oromo, I think, are the largest, followed by the Tigrayans, and then the Amharic. But these militias, protect the interest of the regions and the majority ethnicity in those regions. In 2019, there was a coup attempt in Amhara, which was very, very violent, which has kind of destabilized the region ever since, but that's nothing compared to the Tigrayan conflict up here, which began, I believe, in late 2020, where the rebels were fighting back against the majority Amharic government in Addis Ababa, led by Abiy Ahmed. Tigrayan peoples had been ruling Ethiopia since the Derg fell. But once we have Abiy Ahmed, he's Amharic. They're worried about losing power in Ethiopia, among other reasons. That's just kind of the most basic explanation as to why the movement broke out. And it was very, very violent, bled over into Amhara many times. But that was technically settled in a truce in early 2023. Technically, the Tigrayan conflict is over, but is it really? The issues were not addressed. It was just that they agreed to stop the violence, which is a good thing because, oh my goodness, it was extremely violent. We're not going to get into it because this is a relaxation channel, and it's not relaxing whatsoever. The ethnic violence in Ethiopia. It's a very distressing topic. Not to mention going into details could affect the monetization of this video. So just know that it was bad. It was probably so far the deadliest conflict of the 2020s. But in the wake of the Tigrayan conflict being settled, Abiy Ahmed declared that the militias of each region are technically going to be disbanded and incorporated into the police force of each region. And these militias were not pleased with that because that kind of defeats the purpose of them, which is to protect the interests of each region and the peoples in that region. If you just make them government employees, then, then what's the point? So there were many, many protests in Amhara, which eventually led into violent clashes against the Amhara militias and the government in Addis Ababa. It reached a breaking point in August 2023 when it turned excessively violent. There's a current state of emergency declared in Amhara as the government is trying to keep these soldiers from gaining the upper hand, because Addis Ababa's right here. They can march over any time through a Romeo. Apparently the militia has control of Lalibela and many, many of the major cities up here. But so as of late September, when I'm filming this, the violence has been toned down, but it could spark up at any moment. Anything could trigger it. Once again, there's a lot of suffering of the civilians caught in the middle. Lots of people's displaced, lots of people's harmed and killed, in many, many horrific ways that we're not going to get into because it's very sad. So that is the current situation. It's officially being called the Amhara crisis, from what I can tell in news bulletins. And we will just have to keep an eye on Amhara and make sure it doesn't devolve into an all-out civil war, and hopefully can be resolved peacefully, because as we have seen, Amhara is a really remarkable place with some of the most important sites in Ethiopian history. We don't want any violence anywhere in the world, especially incredibly beautiful places like Amhara. So let's pull up Google Earth and take a closer look at this amazing place. This slideshow is really bad. The only good picture here is of this church here in Lalibela, which is still like the most stunning thing. So cool. Let's start over at Lake Tana and Bahir Dar, which again, this slideshow is not great. It's a lot of, it's 20 pictures in this spot. Not great. But I believe currently, as of filming this, Bahir Dar is controlled by the militia, I believe. The last that I read. You can see right here is the source of the Nile River. That didn't pop up. Oh, that's why, because there's no pictures. The source of the Nile River right here, flowing through Bahir Dar. There's a beautiful monument here commemorating those who fought against the Derg and I believe the Italians as well during World War II. There's a lot of monuments here commemorating those who lost their lives during those political crises. He's posing by the helicopter there. Lots of old relics. They're like 30 years old. Old relics from previous wars, but really, really neat statues. I bet inside is more artifacts from those times. Really neat statue, I think. Really beautiful. This guy agrees. It's very important. I looked around Bahir to try to find some other cool things to show you, but the coolest things are over here on the lake. There's some beautiful churches around here, by the way, that are very, very old, but I want to show you something even cooler, which is the islands of Lake Tana, which have been sacred for a long, long time. And as you can see here, there are monasteries on these islands, which is a great place for a monastery, to be honest. Very nice location. Also, many Ethiopian kings have their tombs on the islands of Lake Tana. And here you can see a great example of Tewahedo religious art. They all have these kind of similar faces with the big eyes and kind of like afro hairstyle, which I really like. But many people who attended these churches could not read, so they painted the stories here so that people could still follow along. You can see there's baby Jesus there with a really pretty Mary. And you can see it looks like Jesus being resurrected. There's some angels up there. This looks like Moses, there's everyone else being trapped in the Red Sea. I'm not a Christian, so I don't know all the stories, but some of them are very evident. That looks like Adam and Eve being expelled, like they're kind of obvious if you know the bare basics of the stories. But they're very, very old, very cool buildings. Look, this guy's got his pelican squad. The Last Supper there in the art style. There's a very religious looking man probably giving a tour of the area. Apparently tourists are, that's what's his name, sacrificing his son. Abraham, right? Because then he sacrifices the goat instead. And look, there's God telling him, it's fine, you can do the goat instead of your son. That beautiful Mary there. And yeah, very cool. That looks like the Last Supper up there. I wonder if that's Mary Magdalene. Another cool one up here. I think this one is also a tomb. Let's see. Yeah, preserved there. Yeah, I think this is the tomb inside the monastery for the various kings who are buried there. Some old artifacts there preserved. Posen. Yeah, they encourage tourists to come to these monasteries to look around, but they are still active monasteries of the old Europes. Yeah, this one is more of a museum vibe, doesn't it? I assume you have to take, chartered boats, but they're all over the place. Look at all the monasteries on this island. I believe there's some tombs up here as well. Just look at one. Yeah, there's another one. More beautiful artwork. You get the idea. Really, really incredible art style there. There are incredible churches all over this region. Oh, this is another big island for tombs. You can see all the churches here as well. And an old sand lake. No water in it anymore. More monasteries. Yeah, feel free to check out these places in your own time. I would show you, but they'd still start to blend into each other. But I think that's so fascinating. Let's check out Gondar here. I don't know what that was. Okay. My desk just shook on its own. That's cool. Facilities Bath. Look at this. Part of the castle here. Oh, look at the overgrown trees. That's really beautiful. The bath area there, which I imagine was a big old pool. Pretty dresses. Oh, all decorated with the colors there. And look, it's full of water. But yeah, I assume that is the one of the castle areas. There's quite a few here in Gondar. Let me just pull up. Gondar slideshow so I can show you. Beautiful, beautiful churches there. Again, all decorated, and people are swimming on the path. Enjoying the water. I bet it was a hot day. Look how sprawling this is. Really, really neat. And again, it has kind of that very medieval European vibe to it, which that's what they were going for. They wanted it to be like a full-blown castle, you know. There's lots of other castles around Gondar, but this is the big famous one, probably the best preserved. Look at the lions. Goodness. Ethiopia, lions are a big, big symbol of the country. It's a pretty church there. Oh, cool statue. A big party there at the castle. Look how beautiful. All the stonework and everything. This is a remarkable place, I think. Speaking of remarkable places, let's go check out Lalibela. Gotta really zoom out so I don't get lost. Here it is. So, as you're gonna see from above, the churches are very much covered up. You can't see them from above, which is unfortunate for us, but very fortunate for the churches. Let's look at the museum. You can still go inside these places. I wouldn't recommend it now because of the crisis, but typically during better times you can still tour these churches and go inside, see for yourself. Yeah, they are constantly working. Thankfully it's a UNESCO site because again, someone sneezes wrong and the whole thing's gonna go down. So they are extremely, extremely well preserved and taken care of. The rock-hewn churches of Lalibela. Just unreal, just to think that they just dug and just built as they went down. That is so, so remarkable. How incredible. Kind of has that Petra vibe, but like Petra eat your heart out, you know? It is remarkable how these things are constructed. I don't know if there's going to be pictures of the inside places like this because it's even more detailed and beautiful inside. Yeah, how cool is that? Tiny one there. The intricate details here on the ceiling, also very indicative of Ethiopian religious art. Yeah, look at that. Oh, it's gorgeous. It's such an incredible feat. I love the details of the interiors. All the rugs and drapes. That's so incredible. It is a very, very beautiful place. And lastly, let's go take a look at the natural sites up in the mountains. You can see just how mountainous this region is. It is a lot. There you go. There's Rostoshin up there. Look at this mountain. Rostoshin. This is the highest point in Ethiopia, by the way. I don't think the pictures here really do it justice, but you can see the type of landscape this place has. Again, not when you think like a forest, it's not necessarily covered in trees, but there's the gorgeous waterfalls, amazing shrubby plant life up in the clouds, very, very rocky. And I guess you see this up at the top. Rostoshin, 4,543 meters. Someone made that little tablet there. Big old waterfalls in this region. Because the cliffs are so huge. Let me try to put on 3D. So you can see that like these mountains have just huge drop-off points. And yes, of course, there are amazing little monasteries and churches in this area, which is really neat, I think. Look at this valley here. A big, big drop-off. And just nearby we can find the National Park. Waiting for the thing to pop up. Don't see it. Oh, here also you can see from above the differences in the two geographic regions I mentioned, the more mountainous, and this green space here, which if we zoom out, you can see is part of this grander green area, which is the rainforest of Central Africa, the Congo. It just reaches up into here. So while this isn't like the rainforest, it's way more forested than the mountains here. Why does Google Earth betray me so much? About this, let's just type in Simeon Mountains National Park. There we go. Thank you. So that we can see some of these sites. And again, look at how incredible these cliffs are. Big, big drop-offs. Let's look at this. I think this is the slideshow I was looking for. Nope, it's not. That's just one picture. One picture is not a slideshow, but incredible scenery here. And look, much more green than the rest of the region, isn't it? Let's look. What's this? Let's see. Oh, how neat. You can see the apes here. No, the monkeys. They're monkeys, I think, right? Apes. But they travel in little families together, which is really sweet. Big, big cliffs here that you can explore. Pretty flowers. And of course the waterfalls over the sides of the cliffs. And of course there's lots of churches and monasteries here in this beautiful, beautiful region. How gorgeous, right? Is this the one we looked at? Yeah. Alright, so I'm going to end it there. Thank you so much for watching. And again, we have to keep an eye on this region and make sure that the situation does not get any worse than it already has been in the past month. We'll have to watch the news and keep our fingers crossed that all will go well. If you enjoyed this style of content, please consider subscribing. So this is an ongoing series. Next, we are going to head over to Jordan. If you know your world capitals, you know where we're going. And we're going to see one of my favorite archaeological finds in the whole wide world. It's kind of goofy looking. If you know, you know. So be sure to subscribe so you won't miss out. And you don't want to miss these guys. They're little goofers. I hope that you found this video relaxing and educational. And I hope that you have a good